What I want to ask, I think, here is, you and I know, I think most people watching this knows that whatever is said at the Scottish Labour conference, whatever, frankly, the UK Parliament vote on when it comes to a ceasefire now, immediately, never, whenever, isn't really going to change the activities of Netanyahu. So is this therefore just a case of essentially Labour being a bit browbeaten by activists and not wanting to lose certain elements of the vote?
The first thing is, I think most Labour MPs join the Labour Friends of Israel and the Labour Friends of Palestine when they first become MPs, which I did at the time, a long time ago. Now, there is a certain element of how many angels can dance on the head of a pin here. Everybody wants the slaughter in Gaza to stop. It's how you do it. It's just by making declarations, whether it's within the Labour Party or whether it's in the House of Commons, that will not add very much. What Keir Starmer wants, what the Labour Party want, what I want, is a process whereby there is a political resolution to the extremely long conflict there has been in the Middle East around Israel and Gaza. Because if we don't do that, then it is pointless. And you've got to remember, at the core of this issue are Hamas, who are dedicated to killing Jews and wiping Israel off the face of the map. So there's a real problem at the heart of this if Hamas aren't dealt with one way or another, either by surrendering and handing over the hostages or being beaten. But Israel clearly have a responsibility to reduce the number of civilians who are killed. But everybody wants to see the slaughter ending.
Graham, I think it's important you take a stance. I think it's important the Labour Party and indeed the Tory government take a stance on what's going on in Gaza. But I can't imagine that old Netanyahu over in Jerusalem is sort of going to be waiting to see what Keir Starmer says at the Scottish Labour conference, or indeed various Labour backbenchers, what their stance is on whether or not Israel should enter into a ceasefire. So I don't think it'll make a difference. So you kind of get this picture that Labour's kind of tearing itself apart about something that doesn't really make any difference to anything. But there is an SNP proposal to Parliament on Wednesday, which will call for an immediate ceasefire. Why doesn't Keir Starmer just let Labour MPs vote for that if they want to? He seems to want to make a differentiation between the word immediate and now. This is just parliamentary debating society nonsense, isn't it? Why not let Labour vote for the SNP motion, or is that politically, not in order?
First of all, I agree with the first point you made. I don't think Netanyahu is waiting to know what Keir Starmer or even the British Parliament say on this issue. But that doesn't mean to say what is said is completely irrelevant for the future. I think the democratic society in Europe and in North America are looking for a pathway through to putting pressure both on Hamas and Israel to find a medium long-term political solution. And in that sense, it is very important that the United Kingdom align themselves with people who want peace and want democracy, want justice for the Palestinians, and want to secure Israel. And it's important that we stay within that group. So in the short term, nothing will change, whatever the vote is on Wednesday. But in the medium term, staying close to people who Netanyahu probably will take notice of, although not as much notice as Israel used to in terms of the United States and the other European democracies, is important. What we don't want to get into is virtue signalling that upsets at least one of the parties for a long time. So, yeah, your first point is right, but it's not right for very long.
I want to ask you, if you wouldn't mind, about Ian Austin, who's a former Labour MP, as you know, who's now a non-affiliated peer, being suspended from his role as chair of the housing association Midland Heart after he essentially put out a tweet, I think it was, which some might find a little bit on the nose, if you will, but criticising Islamists after it's found out a UN organisation were accused of having Hamas operatives in their midst. I think he said, you know, check your basements, and if you've got Islamists and other things there, why don't you just get rid of them? As a result, he's lost his job and he's now the subject of death threats. It seems to me this is becoming all too familiar a pattern.
I think that's right. I think the conflict that's taking place in Gaza at the present time has removed the camouflage from some anti-Semites, and they're using the opportunity, any opportunity, to attack anybody who isn't saying what they're saying. I think it's important for Ian and anybody else in this extraordinarily difficult situation to use moderate language, but not to ignore the fact that Hamas are an organisation that wants to murder Jews. They want to finish off Israel, and that is at the core of this conflict. Ian used particularly colourful imagery to talk about the accusation that people working for a UN agency were working for Hamas. I think it's better to say things simply and straightforwardly. But for Ian, who has not only been strong in criticising people who are racist and anti-Semitic, he has also done over a lifetime an extraordinarily good job on behalf of people who need housing and social housing. For him to lose his job over that is wrong. It's just quite simply wrong. He's entitled to his views, and he shouldn't lose his job because of that.
Just as a byproduct of this discussion, Amy Winehouse's statue in Camden, near where she lived, has been defaced today, Graham, with pro-Palestine stickers. Amy, of course, being someone Jewish, so that feeds into what Alex has been talking about. But could you explain, Graham, when it was that Labour's policy about the Middle Eastern war changed? Because Keir Starmer said, we stand with Israel, we stand by their right to defend themselves. When did that change? In fairness, it seems to have changed on the part of the Prime Minister and Lord Cameron, the Foreign Secretary as well. When did Labour's policy change?
I'm not aware that it has. I think that Labour's policy is still that Israel has to defend itself. I think as the conflict has increased, there has been a increasing concern about the number of people, particularly children, who have been killed in Gaza, and some of the languages changed in terms of how you get to a sustainable ceasefire. But I don't think the Labour Party's policy on saying that that Israel has the right to defend itself has changed. And just one other thing, when you mentioned Amy Winehouse's statue being defaced, I represent a large number of Jewish people and a large number of Muslims. I think the most important thing for people in this country to do, we won't have very much, if any, impact on Israel, is to make sure that hate doesn't win, and that where there are Muslim communities, Jewish communities, we're seen to both protect them, because there have been a huge increase in attacks on Jewish people and an increase in attacks on Muslims, particularly women wearing traditional dress. And we mustn't let that hatred seep into our country, which is why we should use moderate language.